of you submitted questions, and I have answers here. There were a lot of the same questions, so I'm going to go through 7 different areas that I'm going to talk to you about, and then I'm going to get to Q&A probably in 20 or 30 minutes, but I'm going to talk to you a great deal first. This does have some parts of it that remind me of 2008. Certainly from a financial perspective, we are not there. You know, we didn't come into this already in a financial problem like we did then. But as far as things changing by the day, I'm getting some memories of that, and it's certainly bringing back some old memories that I'm like, geez, I remember then when all different kinds of things were happening. So I'm going to kind of break it all down for you, talk about where we've been over the last couple of weeks, what I expect for the next couple of weeks, and so on. The governor did change things on us this morning, and he requested, he put out an advisory, I have it right here, for a shelter in place. So he's advising that people shelter in place, and he is ordering that all non-essential businesses close. So for here at Lamacchia Realty, I'm here to let you know that we are closing all of our branch offices. But we will continue to be able to process accounting and do things like that to make sure people are paid, make sure deposits are deposited, and so on. Here it is right here. This talks about essential services. So wanted to mention that to you guys because that obviously changes things, and it changes what I expect in the market over the next week. Another thing I want to mention before I get started and going over numbers with you is sometimes when I'm live like this, and I plan to be for at least another half an hour, sometimes it can pause for a second, or sometimes there's like a speed bump when you're watching. Just wait, keep watching, it'll correct, and it'll bring you right back to it. And if you do watch later, you'll be able to see it very clearly. So let me jump in. Let's talk about the last week or the last couple of weeks. As I told you guys last week, I always evaluate 7-day increments. Every single week for the last 10 years, we look at Sunday morning at 12:01 a.m. to Saturday night at, or whatever it is, 12 a.m. to Saturday night at 11:59. And we always evaluate every week in the state of Massachusetts, MLS PIN, how many properties have been listed. For our out-of-state friends that are watching, pay attention. Maybe this will interest you. If you look here, over the last few weeks, if we go back a little bit earlier in March, there was like, or late February, 2,100 homes listed in a week, then 2,490, then last week, or the week before last, 2,497, and now, this past week, 2,063. So about a 20% reduction in the amount of homes that are listed, which does not shock me. A lot of people got alarmed last week and said, you know what, maybe I'll delay listing my home. And I told all of you last Monday that if a seller waits 2 or 3 weeks to list their home, I do not think you are at any disadvantage. Now, I would never say that in a normal spring. The sooner you list in the spring, the better off you always are, because in the winter and going into early spring, there's this many buyers and there's this many sellers. So the sooner you list, the better off you are. Now, I don't feel that way. This is a very unusual set of circumstances. Buyer activity has come down about a quarter, about 25%. And I know, and now it's going to come down more, that the governor did that a few hours ago. And I know that when that lifts, all that demand is going to come rushing back, or most of that demand. There's obviously job losses and things like that. So I'm going to get into that in a few minutes. But bottom line, homes listed was only down about 20% last week. Now check this one out. Properties UAG, we say UAG, pending. Bottom line, that means contracts accepted. Last week, 1,921 contracts accepted in Massachusetts. The prior week, 2,000. Now these two numbers here, just so you know, in a normal spring, these would be higher. The amount of homes listed last week compared to the week before would have went up probably 10 or 12 or 15%. The amount of homes pending would have did the same thing. Then you look at homes sold. This is going to shock everyone. Everyone's going to go, what? I thought there were delays. Yeah, there were, but guess what? Last week, 971 homes sold in Massachusetts, okay, according to MLS PIN, compared to 894 the week before, 879 the week before that. Now, why is that extremely impressive? Well, I have news for you. If it wasn't for registries closing, fire departments coming screeching to a halt last week, that 971 number would have been probably 1,200 or 1,300, which would be more typical with this time of year. but it goes to show the strength of a spring market where so many sellers and so many buyers are just dying to list, dying to buy, that they kept pressing on when maybe they shouldn't have. And I know there's a lot of varying opinions on that, but let me stick with my stats and I'll get into that in a few minutes. Now we go across. Inventory of homes for sale. Check this out. 11,263 as of 45 minutes ago. Last week, 11,241. A lot of people are thinking, what the hell? There's still just as many homes on the market as there was a week ago? Yes, but that number would have been higher. It would have been closer to 12,000 if it was a normal spring situation. Then you come over here. This is the golden number right here. This percentage is what I look at all the time, every single week for 10 years. The last two weeks before, 19%, 19.5% of homes that were listed went under contract. This past week, 17%. So yes, 2% less homes went under contract in the last week, despite all that's going on. If that doesn't show that there is so much pent-up buyer demand out there, I don't know what does. I really don't know what could possibly prove to you that there is a tremendous amount of buyer demand out there, other than we went into this whole thing a week ago, very, in a big way, and the amount of homes that went under agreement was only 2% less. The amount of homes that were listed was only 20% less. The amount of homes that went under agreement was only maybe 8% less. That shows a lot of strength in the market, okay? Now, obviously, in the next week, we're going to see a big change. I'll talk about that in a minute. I want to show you some other data that we're tracking here at Lamacchia Realty. Where did that go? Hold on. Now, this here is temporarily withdrawn properties and canceled properties. Now, I want to show you something else. We always track the data weekly. Now we're tracking it twice a day. My good friend Lauren, who's sitting back there, has been tracking it at least twice a day, morning and night, to see how the flow of homes for sale is going each and every day. And we've been right around low 11,000s for the week. I expect that to go down in the next week because of especially what the governor just did. Now you go into temporarily withdrawn properties, and you can see here that yesterday 41 properties were withdrawn from the market, 44 the day before, 25 the day before, 66 the day before on Friday. And you look at last year in 2019, it was like half of that. So the amount of properties that were on the market that are going on, coming off, has increased, okay? The amount of properties that are canceling is going up. I think that's normal. And I think that, normal under the circumstances, but it is not normal under a typical spring, okay? This has happened because people are freaked out, rightfully so. I mean, you can't put the news on without hearing about viruses and all kinds of things, and it is a very serious matter. And I think that as time goes on, people are taking it more and more serious. I will be honest, 10 days ago, I didn't really think we'd end up where we are now. But the government's taking it very serious, and for the most part, other than the spending bill that they're talking about right now, both sides of the aisle seem to be getting along and agreeing that these drastic measures are necessary. And I'm willing to trust them to an extent that it must be. Now, what do I expect this week? I think that there will still be some properties listed, no question about it, especially in the next 2 days. I don't think that is a bad move if a seller does that. But you have to do it knowing that you can't have showings. You know, having showings in a traditional sense, or I shouldn't even say, having showings at all, you're basically going against what the governor recommends, okay? Now, if it's something completely essential, like a closing is on Friday morning at 10, and you're gonna do your final walkthrough at 9, and you, the buyer, absolutely has to buy for some reason, the seller absolutely has to sell for some reason, financial reason, who knows, it could be connected to other sales. It does say in there that financial transactions are allowable. There's some language around that and caveats, and I don't want to be the person to try to decipher specific legal language that comes for our governor. I'm not the governor, and I'm not claiming to be. But my recommendation as a real estate professional, as someone that owns a real estate office and has a brokerage with hundreds and hundreds of listings all over Massachusetts, Southern New Hampshire, Rhode Island, my recommendation, if you can wait 2 or 3 weeks to list, just wait. If you can't because of some reason, fine. Get the calls by phone, send people pictures, send people information. If you're the realtor listening right now, fine, no problem. But doing things in a traditional sense is going to be very difficult. So in the next week, I expect canceled properties, temporarily withdrawn properties to go up. I expect less properties to be listed. I expect dramatically less properties to go under contract, but I don't really expect sold properties to change that much. The reason, the reason I say that, government's working very hard. Governor Baker signed a bill on Friday that allows people to close without a fire inspection in hand, so long as the buyer agrees to indemnify the parties involved and to be the one to obtain the fire certificate 90 days after, within 90 days of the state of emergency ending. So let's say our state of emergency ends in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, you would have theoretically 90 days after that, unless they change it. Again, I don't want to be the lawmaker here, but that's what they're saying. So buyers now need to accept that responsibility. I understand that some buyers are like, well, that wasn't my responsibility when I negotiated the deal. Okay, be reasonable. This is unforeseen circumstances. Talk to your buyer's agent about it. Buyer's agent should talk to listing agent about it. Maybe you guys can work something out. Maybe the seller can be reasonable and credit the buyer. Maybe if the seller already did all the smokes and all this needed is a certificate, only a small amount of a credit needs to be done. Either way, both sides need to work together. I mentioned that last week. When I talked about 08 in the beginning of this and 08 last week, when things got tough back in the late summer of 08, because of banks and all kinds of things. Again, different situation. We were headed for a financial disaster. People were behind in their mortgages. The economy was completely slowing down. This situation right now, some of you right now are listening going, well, that's where we are now. Well, we're there now because of a health crisis. We weren't there 3 weeks ago. The stock market was at almost 30,000, 29,000 and change. So I expect all that to happen. What I strongly recommend all buyers and sellers to do, and realtors, guys, work together. Call one another. When I was talking about what happened there in the fall of 08, we'd pick the phone up. Hey, my buyer, they wanted to close, or they wanted to buy the home. Now they're worried about their job. Get an extension signed. Be reasonable with one another. If you're a seller, give a buyer a little more time to figure things out. If you're a buyer, give a seller a little more time to do something or get something done with the home. There's no reason. See, the sad part of real estate that's always bothered me, frankly, is people go into real estate sometimes, real estate transactions, like they're getting into a cage match. Like, oh, they're going to fight the other side, and I'm going to win, and I'm going to get as much as possible. Guys, there's no reason to do that. Seller wants to sell, buyer wants to buy. Both parties need to be reasonable. And right now, parties need to be especially reasonable. This is an unusual time. Work together. Take the advice of your realtor. Take the advice of your real estate attorney, your mortgage broker, and heed their advice and do what they say so that you can navigate this correctly. Another item that I want to mention related to this when I talk about extensions is other delays. So right now in the next couple of weeks, we're going to see still a lot of transactions closing because these are deals that were in the pipeline, okay? When we get into April, May, we're going to see delays. And we just put out a great blog over the weekend. Our marketing team did a great job on what we're calling the coronavirus real estate logjam. That lists out all the areas that we expect delays. Mortgage brokers, mortgage companies, title examiners, attorneys, law firms as a whole, fire departments, although I just talked to you about the waiver for that. All different things. That blog goes through absolutely everything. Look at that blog. We're going to post it in the comments of this live feed. Look at that blog and you will see in there what we expect for delays, why, and what you as a buyer or seller can do about it. And you're going to see there's a lot of talk about hiring the right mortgage broker, hiring the right attorney. That's why most of the time it's smart to take the advice of your realtor and hire the attorney that they recommend. Or if they give you 3, go with one of the 3. Same with a mortgage broker, because it's very, very important to work with people who are very good at their trade, very good at their craft, especially in tough times, okay? Think about that one. Now when I talk about mortgage rates, I want to talk about interest rates. I talked about mortgages, I want to talk about interest rates. Interest rates at the beginning of coronavirus did this. Then there wasn't enough secondary players buying mortgage-backed securities. There were capacity issues, warehouse lines of credit for lenders that were bridging the money from the time that they write the loan to the time that it's sold to Fannie, Freddie, FHA, or a private company. those dried up, so rates went up. And mortgage companies did that on purpose because they had to slow down the refi demand. They had to slow down the purchase demand. So rates went up, then they went up more. Late last week, they were over 4%. It was wild. Here we are today, they're back down to 3.375. So now we're back to the lowest rates that we've ever seen. Okay, this is a roller coaster ride. We are in a unusual situation, okay? But I want to talk to you guys about something, because my next subject goes into, should a buyer bail? Should a buyer be concerned that if they buy a house today for $500, it's going to be worth $400 in 2 months? I have news for you. If you buy a house for $500 today, no matter what, it will not be worth $400 in 2 months. It doesn't work like that. That didn't even happen in '08. It's a longer progression. Many things have to go wrong. The inventory of homes for sale has to go through the roof to create too much supply. None of that is happening, okay? We're in a very unusual set of circumstances. Now, if unemployment reaches 20 or 30%, we could be faced with some of that, but follow me on a couple different things, okay? Let's go down that dark, scary road. Unemployment goes to 20, 30%, which would be like insane. I saw an article this morning, worst since 1948 if that happened. I don't think that's going to happen. I think the government is really working hard, and they're coming out with this stimulus bill that's going to be $1.6 trillion. They're going to be giving grants to small businesses to keep, well, if it gets approved. I just saw that it got denied, but eventually they'll stop arguing and grandstanding and trying to make themselves look cool, and they'll come together as they should have 2 days ago, and they'll get it approved. But anyway, when they come together and they do that, I think that companies will be able to hold on longer, and we will get through this. This is a health crisis, okay? But let's keep going down that road. If that were to happen, and if there was tremendous unemployment and we saw inventory of homes for sale skyrocket, that is something that happens over a period of time. But let's say the house you buy today is worth, for $500, is worth $450 in a year. And you think, well, I don't want to lose $50,000. Okay, I want you to think about something else. Rates right now are 3.3%. If you are keeping your home long term, would you rather buy today at $500 with the potential of the property going to $450 and do it at 3.3%, or would you rather buy in a year or 2 years when rates could be 4.5%? 1% more on a $400,000 loan adds up. And remember, that adds up annually. So you think, oh, it's only $4,000 a year. Okay, well, you're going to stay there 30 years. Start doing the math, okay? You do that math, it adds up substantially when you compound interest on it, and you're spending substantially more money at a higher rate. Now, I will say, if you're someone who's in the flipping business, we do some of that. We buy properties, renovate them, and flip them. I would be careful right now. If you're going to do quick flips, 1 to 2 months, I think you're fine, because even if there happens to be a decline in the market, you'll get in and out quick enough. I don't know that I would be getting into doing 6-month flips, but if you're a first-time home buyer and you've been dying to buy and you've been saving up money for 2 to 3 years, and all you want to do is buy a home for yourself or your family or whoever, you're crazy if you bail out because this is going on. Look at our friend, the person we most admire, most of us most admire, Warren Buffett. One of the richest men in the world. He always says, I said this in last Monday's video, I'm going to say it today, I'll probably say it next Monday. When other people are scared, be greedy. When other people are greedy, be scared. So in actuality, according to Warren Buffett's theory, you're better off buying right now than 3 weeks ago. Think about that. You're better off buying right now than 3 weeks ago. Now let me tell you how I think it'll go and why I don't think we're going to see a complete collapse in the market. Right now, as I just showed you the data, there's 11,000 homes for sale in Massachusetts. Real estate is a business that runs on supply and demand. That is it. If it were more complicated, I wouldn't be able to do it at the level that I do it, okay? If this was brain surgery, I wouldn't be that good at it, okay? But it's supply and demand. The more supply there is, the less demand there is, then you see prices start to fall. We have 11,000 homes for sale. 2007, at this time of the year, there were like 20-something thousand homes for sale because it was really starting to get ugly. At the worst of the market, I believe it was the summer of 2000, It was either 8 or 9, I'd have to look back. We had 47,000 homes for sale in Massachusetts. 47,000. Think about that. And that went up from late 06, even 05, to 09. Guys, we've been in the lowest inventory for 4 years. The last year it got a little better. At this time we had like 13,000 homes in the market. We have like 10 million people, I don't know, 6 million people, something like that in Massachusetts. And we have a lousy 11,000 homes for sale. Do the numbers. We have more people than we did then. We have a stronger economy than we did then. Income, wages, down payments are better than they were then. Whole bunch of things. So inventory would have to go up substantially to see prices fall at all. My prediction, prices don't fall this year. That's what I think. I don't think they'll fall. Might they level off? Yes. Might we see a dip next year if this recession that it looks like we're going to have turns into like a one-year thing? Might there be a dip next year, go down 5%? I don't know. Possibly. But I do not see anything happening immediately. And you've got to be cognizant of interest rates. So again, that inventory of homes for sale, that supply is a big deal. If you just tuned in, I'm going to do a Q&A in about 10 more minutes. I'm just going through the most popular questions that we got. So that is my opinion as far as what a buyer should be thinking. I also want to talk more about the economy. I don't claim to be an economist, but I am a complete news and economic geek who consumes all news from all different channels and avenues all day, every day. I'm obsessed. And I want to talk to you about a couple different things. I mentioned this last week. 3 weeks ago, the jobs report for February, 275,000 new jobs created. Not going to happen in March. There's going to be a loss. We're going to go negative for the first time in a long time right here in March. Unemployment rate, lowest in history. Okay, wages have been climbing a lot. Hours worked have been climbing a ton. The economy was roaring, roaring. It's what you refer to, for my economic geek friends there, it is what you refer to as a Goldilocks economy, where everything is flying. When we hit this health situation, this health crisis, if we came into this with a weak economy, I'd say, all right, we got a problem. We came into it with a very, very strong economy. We also came into it with a full decade of the strongest book of mortgages ever written. Higher down payments, lower DTI ratios, more conventional loans, more people using cash. So the book of mortgages is very strong. The economy was very strong. Jobs very strong. When you look at all those factors, none of that matches up to 08. By the time we got to 08, there were so many mortgages written to, frankly, people that shouldn't have gotten them, or written to people that should have gotten them but under terms that were terrible. We don't have that right now. We don't have that at all. Okay? So we don't have an impending credit crisis. I shouldn't even say impending, an already started credit crisis like we had at that time. Okay? In addition, we went into this with a strong economy. So I could be wrong. I'm one person. I own a real estate company. I'm not a president. I'm not a governor. You know, I'm not a, not that they know, but I'm not a economist. But I do not see us going off a cliff. Do I see a financial adjustment, a recession? Remember, recession's 3 consecutive quarters of negative growth. Yes, I think that will likely happen. But do I think that it's going to be an 08 scenario all over again where things go crazy, no one can pay their mortgages? No, I don't. I'll tell you something else. We learned a lot from 08. I've talked to a handful of people who got ahead of the curve. They already called their mortgage companies in the last week and said, what can you do for me? I'm worried about being able to pay. The mortgage company said, no problem. No problem. Pay us in July. 3-month reprieve doesn't affect your credit. Now, confirm that before you do that. But my point is, mortgage companies are working with people. The government is putting tremendous pressure on them. Then you look at consumer loans. I have friends in all kinds of businesses. I talked to a friend the other day who was smart enough to call a construction lending firm that lends money for Caterpillar. And they said, I'm concerned about paying blah, blah, blah. Oh, no problem, pay us in July. So already banks are adapting. That's vastly different than 2007 and 8. It took 3 years for their banks to get their you-know-what together to deal with people that were in really tough situations. I'm already seeing very good signs. If people are given a reprieve, if they're given time to pay, they'll be okay. We as a company, we're going to be giving people some direction on how to handle those situations with their mortgages, and we'll be out with that in the next couple of weeks. Many of you know and many of you don't know, but we helped more people avoid foreclosure than any other company in New England when the market went bad last time. And if this does get to that, we will do it once again. In fact, we'll do it more than anybody in the country, and many people actually think we were #1 in the country with that too, but I don't have data to prove that, so I'm not going to say it. But if things get ugly, we'll be there for our past clients. I can promise you that. More to come on that. So I hope that gives people an understanding of what I see for the real estate market and why. And I hope that gives buyers some comfort in, do you really need to completely bail out? I'll tell you one thing, and then I'm going to go to Q&A. We had 3 situations last week that buyers bailed out of transactions. Well, we had more than that. We had about 15 out of hundreds and hundreds, which isn't a bad number. But we had 3 situations where in the beginning of the week a buyer said, I'm bailing out, and at the end of the week they said, you know what, is that house still available? I still want it. And then when I heard that, I again reminded our agents, extensions are your friends right now. If you're a buyer, if you're a seller, if you're nervous, just speak to your broker, speak to your attorney, get an extension, get a 2-week extension signed. If an inspection was supposed to be this week, say, you know what, is it okay if I do my inspection in 2 weeks? Now, under normal circumstances, that would not be okay. It wouldn't be accepted lightly. Now, most people are going to say okay to that. Get a little more time. Figure out what's happening with your job. If you're someone that has lost your job and you know you will not be able to afford to buy the home that you are under contract for, bail out. Bail out, and your realtor ought to help you do it. Your attorney ought to help you do it, and they should not be pressuring you or trying to sell you on staying in the transaction. Absolutely not. Get out. What's best for you is what you should do. So, I'll take questions and then I'll give a recap again. We have 2 questions? Okay, sure.
Will new construction take a big hit and will developers pull back, from Megan Mahoney?
Will new construction take a big hit and will developers pull back? I'll give the same answer to this that I gave a week ago and the week before when I was in Vegas. If this is a 2 or a 3-week thing, I think it's going to be like going over a massive speed bump and then hitting a pothole and then getting out of it. I think we'll be out of it. I think that builders will, be a little bit hesitant, but I think that things will move on okay. I really feel that way mostly because this is a health crisis and because this should be temporary. If it turns into several months, I absolutely think builders will pull back, and they should. I'll tell you, in our company, many of you know we have a program where if someone doesn't want to list their home but they want to sell, we'll buy the home. We're still buying homes. We've made contracts to buy 2 in the last 2 weeks. Next question?
Do you think agents will feel this more now or a year from now?
Well, no, now. There's no question. Now, the agents are going to feel this slowdown in the next 2 weeks more than they felt it. I do a lot of training around the state, around the country, and I've made people laugh when I've said in the last year or 2 years, we're in la-la land, wait till you see a real market. Well, you know what? We might be facing a real market for a year or 2, but in a real market, buyers buy, sellers sell. The beginning of a slowdown is the hardest part for realtors. That is the hardest part, is the beginning. We are in that right now. Do I think it'll be an extended slowdown? I'm still going to bet probably not. But do I think it's going to be ugly and bumpy? Guys, if the governor comes out and the president comes out in 2 to 3 weeks and says, all right, people can start to get back to normal, that's what they're going to do. They're going to start. Then a few weeks later, okay, everybody can be normal. A few weeks after that, they'll get back to normal. We'll see a slowdown that we'll get through. If it turns into 2 or 3 months, then we're talking about a different story. So for our realtor friends watching, I can tell you that the next 2 weeks is going to be the more painful time for you. But if you have deals already under contract that are scheduled to close, you'll be okay because of that with those, but you obviously need to be concerned about what is coming in the months to come. Any other 2 more questions?
2 more
okay?
questions. Do you think people will be more inclined
Speak
to
up so
buy
they can hear.
in the suburbs versus the city after this due to the virus? City life has so many people.
Do I think people will be more inclined to buy in the suburbs as opposed to the city because the city has so many people? No, I don't. Americans have very short memories. No one will change where they live because of Corona. They might in the next 3 months, but in 4 months from now, people will be like, Corona what? I want to live here. So I don't see the city getting hurt anymore, no.
Do you see values of vacation and second home markets such as the Cape being more adversely impacted than
Yes.
primary home markets?
Yes, I do. I think that vacation home markets, again, if this is prolonged, they're always the ones that get hit first. And I think that even if it's not prolonged, they are going to see a bit of a harder time. You mentioned Cape Cod. We love our friends down in Cape Cod. Then you look at Florida, you look at Vegas. I spoke to someone in Florida yesterday morning on Miami Beach. And by the way, speaking of out of state, I don't mind talking about this for a minute. In Miami last week, just as many properties went pending, got listed, got sold as the weeks prior. So granted, Southern Florida hasn't really seen it yet, but the Miami market's hopping. Miami-Dade County, they're still hopping. So, but I do think if this turns into more than a few weeks, they will be the ones to get hurt more, yes.
If realtors are not listed as essential on the Mass website, are we supposed to be actively listing and showing homes right now?
Okay, sounds like we got a lot of realtors watching. And I love my realtor friends, thank you for tuning in. So should you be actively showing homes right now? Look, I don't want to try to be the governor, the president, the state police, or anything like that, but when I read these documents, this seems pretty clear to me that we should not be out showing homes. There are some clauses in here for essential services. Companies, billing departments, bookkeeping, people that are involved in paying people, they're allowed to work. So I will tell you, the recommendation that I gave to our realtors 1 hour ago was they should not be out showing homes unless there's some absolute necessity, and even then I don't think it's smart and I don't think it's right in the next 2 weeks. Here's how I get myself off the hook. But check with the brokers in your companies or your respective attorneys if I'm not your broker, unless that was one of our brokers.
Nope.
It wasn't, okay.
How will this
One of our
affect,
agents, go ahead.
how will this affect first-time home buyers who are trying to secure a mortgage?
How will this affect first-time buyers who are trying to get a mortgage? I mean, 3.3%, that's today. 3.2, I mean, this is like free money. So I don't see it having a big impact. The fear for first-time buyers, they tend to have more job fear than people that are, second-time buyers, because they tend to be a little bit older. Not that I want to get into age, but that tends to be how it is. So as a first-time buyer, I wouldn't be concerned. Mortgage companies are absolutely writing mortgages, and I don't see that changing. Guys, that's another example. You know what? Good question. This is not '08. When things went bad in '08 and '09, okay, mortgage companies didn't want to lend. The government had to come out, HUD, FHFA, Federal Housing Authority, they had to come out and save the market. If it wasn't for the National Association of Realtors getting HUD to substantially lend, prices would have got twice as bad, and that didn't happen. That's not going on here. Mortgage lenders aren't pulling their necks in at all on lending to buyers. They're just having capacity issues right now because of the refi boom that happened. But refi rates are not as good as they were 3 weeks ago, by the way. Oh, you know what else I should talk about with rates? When the Fed talks about lowering the rate, that does not affect mortgage rates. Two totally separate things. When you see on the news, like last Sunday night and last Monday morning, the Federal Reserve lowered the rate to either somewhere between 0 and 0.25%, that is the overnight funding rate between the Federal Reserve and all the major banks. That is not the mortgage rate. I wish it was. That'd be amazing, but it's not.
All right, 2 more. Another realtor question. Someone has a coming soon listing coming on, was planning on listing this week, but now the client doesn't want to allow showings.
Yep.
If it was your client, would you advise the client to list 2 more weeks?
Very good question. And you know what, and I know we have a lot of buyers and sellers watching. We had a lot of clients saying they were going to tune in or watch it later. So, and we had an agent of ours ask that question an hour ago. So if the listing was posted as coming soon, should you put it live in the market? Here's my recommendation to the whole market. If you can do without listing for another 2 or 3 weeks, I do not think you will be adversely affected. And I would never say that in a normal spring. In a normal spring, listing in March is better than listing in April. Listing in late February is better than listing in March, because you want to do it when inventory is lower. But under the current set of circumstances, where we've already lost, I don't want to say lost, Where 25% of our buyers have decided to postpone buying, and now this week I expect another 30 or 40%, you're not gonna be harmed if you wait a couple of weeks to list. If that person really does need to sell, then I would say list it and line the showings up so that they are happening after the 7th is what I would do. But check with your own broker.
Last question from a soon-to-be seller is getting ready to list their home, not dire that they sell now. Wants to know if they should wait a few months or let it get listed and try to take advantage.
Okay, so basically the same as the last question. Definitely don't wait a few months. You go, I'll tell you this right now. You list your home in May and June, you will get less money than if you list in 2 weeks. Absolutely, positively, no question. Now, if the governor extends this thing, then I'm gonna keep saying it's okay to wait. But if he sticks with April 7th, you will be fine waiting until April 7th. No one's gonna be harmed, and don't let your realtor tell you otherwise. And you know, I said to realtor friends on our Crush It in Real Estate page, this is not a time for sales. This is a time for advising our clients, and I know the vast majority of realtors are good, ethical people who agree with that. Is that it for questions? All right, in closing, I wanna say this, my friends. Every time there is some type of crisis, I will always say the same thing. I will bet on America. Okay, call me patriotic. Yes, I am. We will get through this. Okay, our country has been through so much. You look at 9/11. You look at the '87 stock market crash. You look at '08, which financially was so much worse going into it. Could this get worse? Well, there's a lot of smart people that think so. But right now, that's not the case. You look back 3 weeks, we were in great shape, okay? We will get through this. There's no reason to think that the whole damn world is gonna end. Too many people have been talking like that, and I don't see that. We will get through this. People will buy, people will sell, real estate will move on, kids will eventually get back to school, which in my house, I have 4 children. I have 2 boys that are 9 and 10, and my wife and I are counting the minutes until they go back to school. So we will get through this, life will move on, and we will look back and say, wow, that was a crazy time. If you have further questions, please continue to post them in the comments, continue to send us messages or reply to our emails, because we will make sure to update you. I'm going to stick with the schedule of every Monday at 3 o'clock. If something urgent comes up in between, if there's some major change, I will jump on here and go live during the week. But for now, my plan is to do these every Monday. Look forward to seeing you guys next Monday if I don't sooner. Have a good week, be safe, and take care. Thank you, my friends. Good?
Had a good, there were a lot